Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to talk about the Lone Wargamer, Solo Wargaming for beginners. So back when this channel was first getting going, I did a couple of videos about Solo Wargaming that have proved very popular. However, since then the channel has grown and there are now 5 times the number of subscribers and up to 10 times the amount of engagement and comments that my earlier videos attracted. So I was already sort of considering making a new video about Solo Wargaming to stimulate a conversation with the expanded audience of the channel. But I've also had several people asking me about my solo games. So, bowing to audience requests, here is my updated and revised discussion about how I approach Solo Wargaming. So what are the benefits of Solo Wargaming? Well, first and foremost, it's better than not playing at all. Solo play gives you a chance to dive deep into the rules, to play and replay until you've learned the secrets of the game. There's always something you missed, and playing solo means you get to mess things up without embarrassing yourself. And equally, even the clearest of rule sets will have that one annoying rule that causes confusion in the ranks. Playing solo lets you figure out the true meaning or purpose of a rule before you play with your friends down the club or in a tournament. But solo play can also be slow play, letting you enjoy a scenario over several days if necessary. If you've got a permanent games table, you can take your time, absorb the rules, ponder tactical options, or just take lots of lovely photos. No one will moan if you spend too long moving your units if you're playing by yourself. And if you're filming a game for a video, you can edit all of that out anyway. But I also believe that solo gaming gives you a chance to think like the enemy, see games from both sides and ponder all the options in your own time. When you're playing with your mates down the club or a show, you can't pause to think for a few hours before passing the baton back to your opponent. Not if you want to keep things civil. Taking time to think like your opponent is a useful skill to develop in a solo game, so that when you do meet your friends face to face, you can effectively and quickly anticipate their decisions before they've even made them. Lastly, and following on from the last point, solo gaming gives you a chance to get in much needed tactical practice. You are free to learn the correct strategies, master the rules before putting them into practice against a real opponent. There's nothing you can do about the vagaries of the dice rolls, but at least you can ensure to give yourself every advantage when playing with your friends. So what are my favourite solo wargaming techniques? Well, I've mentioned these before, but here are my go-to options when there's no official solo play option in a set of rules. So the simplest method to bear in mind is when faced with a binary decision of how your imaginary opponent will act, the 50-50 rule is fine. Simply roll a d6 and let the dice make the choice for you. Another option, many board games use chance or tactical cards to provide randomised options at set points in a game. The same concept can be used to randomise a range of options in any given situation to allow for multiple outcomes. This can introduce unexpected events, both good and bad, that can affect one, another or both sides in a game. It can create completely random outcomes, so I found it works best if the effects of chance cards are subtle, but that's something for you to think about when creating those cards. And lastly, on chance cards, I have found them to be a great way to customise the solo game, injecting period appropriate character into a battle. Another option, favoured by the great Charles Grant, is programmed scenarios. This can be as simple as a list of rules governing the behaviour of your invisible opponent. So the Mr. Babbage rules, for instance, in the Men Who Would Be Kings is an excellent example of this sort of method. These describe how the enemy will behave under certain circumstances and under certain conditions, and it can make the play feel more realistic as a result. However, programmed actions can also make predicting the enemy behaviour easier, so it works best when combined with some of the other more random methods that we've discussed. Something that I've explored over the years is the use of randomised reserves, and this can be as simple or as complex as you like, such as rolling on a table to determine the size of the reserves, the entry points, what orders they have. Sometimes it can throw a real spanner in the works and create very interesting tactical conundrums for you to figure out in your solo games. You can also use random terrain, but I don't like this myself, and I've previously spoken about how I particularly dislike random terrain, preferring to keep it grounded in realism. However, roll to see which side you play to avoid unconscious bias when you're choosing a side. All of these options can help you turn any set of rules into a solo game, but you also need to employ a few what I call golden rules. So be flexible. Solo rules that work in one scenario or rule set don't always translate into another set. Remember, no one is watching. There's no right or wrong way to do things, so make mistakes and learn from them. Be ready to cheat. Solo play is a great way to play test what works and what doesn't without judgment. So if you need to roll the game back a bit and do another part again, so be it. Do it your own way. Techniques can be as simple or as complex as you like. You're in charge and there's no right or wrong way to play solo. So there you have my general approach to how I solo wargame. But it has also occurred to me that being a solo wargamer does not necessarily make you a lonely wargamer. Most of the gamers I know use a wide range of social media to keep in touch with each other. So maybe the answer is simply that we're not lonely, but maybe that would be a good topic for a discussion another day. So as usual, I want to throw this discussion out to you. Do you solo plays? Sometimes, all the time, never? Have you ever never even considered it? And if you do, what are your favourite techniques for automating the actions of your imaginary opponent? And if you've never tried your hand at solo wargaming, what's stopping you? As always, your experiences and your comments are very, very welcome. So it's time for a hobby update. And as mentioned last week, I and 3 other members of Posties Rejects got together for a road trip to the World Warfare show at Farnborough. My video of the event went out late on last Sunday and has, at the time of recording this video, had over 4,000 views and generated a lot of comments and dozens of new subscribers. But as promised, I wanted to say a few words about the event and our experience of this year's show. So this is the first time we have been to this actual venue. Our last trip to Warfare was back when it was still at Rivermead. So before I discuss the games and traders, I thought I would talk about the venue itself. Now, there was plenty of free car parking for visitors, although it was a bit dark and chilly out there when we left the show. On arrival and entering the main hall, I was struck by the size of the building. With the exhibitors, traders and tournaments only taking up a portion of the available space. Overall, I thought the lighting was sufficient, but there were areas where, such as in the corners, where I felt it was a little bit dimmer. I don't know if I was imagining it, or it was just the effect of my aging eyeballs, about whether the light was lower in those areas or not. Nor do I even know if it's something that the venue can deal with in the future. In my mind's eye, I have a vision of the venue staff adjusting the lights from a giant dimmer switch, but that may not even be possible. If the lights can be turned up, this would no doubt add to the energy costs of the event and therefore the price. But I actually thought the £10 entrance fee to be quite reasonable for a show of this size. Lastly, regarding the venue, I wanted to talk quickly about the catering. I thought it was pretty good actually. I was a bit overpriced, but that's the same in all of these sort of exhibition venues. However, there was a good selection of food options. They didn't run out, as has happened at other shows I've attended. So overall, I thought that was actually pretty good. All in all, I think this new purpose-built exhibition venue is a pretty good location for a big show like Warfare. I've read a few comments online suggesting that the building was soulless, but to be honest, I'm not really sure what that even means. It's a modern, functional, clean building with good access for traders and visitors alike, and room for expansion of the show in future years. Personally, I think it's an ideal venue for the needs of several hundred ageing wargamers, although there can always be more seating for those of us with creaking joints. And of course, there's plenty of space for expansion of the show into the future, so there's a degree of future-proofing by using a venue like this. Well, that's the venue, but what about the show itself? I think this can be divided, for me anyway, can be divided into 4 sections: the bring and buy, the traders, the demo and participation games, and lastly, the tournaments. So when the public were let in, there was a surge, a stampede if you like, straight for the bring and buy. And like every bring and buy I've ever seen at shows, it was quickly 5 deep in excited wargamers looking for a bargain. Patience and sharp elbows are essential, although it did quieten down a bit after an hour or so. As with any bring and buy, the quality of the stuff on sale varied a lot, but there were some very nice pieces for sale in amongst some less nice stuff, it has to be said. Some of the items were a little overpriced, I felt, but there were bargains to be had, and most of my group ended up buying something by the end of the day off of the bring and buy. Now, there were quite a few traders at the show, but it's hard for me to know if this is more or less than previous years, because I've only, it's been a few years since I've been. What I will say is that I found the diversity of the companies present made for an interesting shopping experience, reflected in the pile of goodies that I came home with. I mean, I bought paints, new tools, modelling supplies, gaming accessories, and of course a few models. And as a group, we all felt this was a good pre-Christmas shopping trip, and we'd all bought quite a bit of stuff by the end of the day. And as I went around, I spoke to several of the traders who indicated a good day in terms of takings. But of course, that was just day one of the show. They certainly seemed busy all day, so hopefully it was worthwhile for all concerned. Now, my video last weekend was focused primarily on the demo games. Despite going with a list clutched in my hand, I still managed to miss a couple of games, so apologies to anyone whose game didn't make it into the video. Sadly, there were still a couple of tables without any signage whatsoever, indicating the details of what they were playing, what the game was, or indeed who was running the game. Hopefully I got the descriptions correct in my video, but if your table lacked any signage and I got the description wrong, I'm afraid you have only one person to blame. So moaning aside, the quality of the games I thought was pretty good, and some were quite spectacular. I mean, two personal favourites stand out for me. The 7 Years War Battle by Ardhammer Group. Their Battle of Domstadel used thousands of beautiful German flats that were frankly a sight to behold. A lovely looking table and really interesting to look at. And I also really enjoyed the 28mm Iswanoana game from Combined Oppo's Wargames group. The figures were lovely, but the train was equally impressive. If you haven't already checked out my video to see the other games that were on display, please do so. So the fourth element of the show was the large tournament section. Now, I'm on record as saying I'm not really a tournament player. It's not my bag. So I didn't spend long looking at this area. I shot a few pictures and everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves and having a good time. But the last thing that I wanted to do really was get in the way or disturb anyone. I don't know the official figure, but at a visual glance, there were probably well over 200 people playing at any one time. And as I say, everyone seemed to be having a really good time. One last thing I wanted to talk about was the incredible mark of respect that took place during the show. So at 11 AM, a bugle played the last post, and then there followed a 2-minute silence because, of course, it was Remembrance Weekend, as people keep calling it. This was observed by everyone present, and you could hear a pin drop. So well done to everyone for such a moving mark of respect. It really was quite a sight to behold. Well, that's it for me this week, a bit shorter than normal. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. And if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from this channel, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course, keep